So Kolaborate is, as you hear it, is what it's meant to mean, but there is a play on the words. So Kola, mu Uganda kwekola emirimu, right?
Yes.
Exactly. And collaboration, to collaborate, is essentially working together. And we genuinely believe the future of work is going to be more collaborative than any other style that we've known in the past. And I would say for any employer listening right now and future employers, we might begin shifting our narrative or understanding of what it means to work with certain groups, especially certain type of generations. And my observation is that in the future, there's going to be a lot of working with as opposed to working for, even if someone is your employee. So it's very important that we appreciate how this journey came about. When we were building the Prism agency, one of the marketing agencies on the market that are doing reasonably decent work for some organizations. When we started it, we were hiring many young people. But then we realized in hiring them, if any of us knows something about the marketing space, projects usually go on for maybe 6 months, sometimes longer, but 3, 4 months, 6 months.
Generally short term.
Yeah, usually, yes. So you're going to hire these young people. Some of them, this is probably their first job. You train them, you skill them, they're eager to impress, eager to get an opportunity to express themselves. And when they get this job, 6 months down the road, the project is done. So obviously, you're going to dissolve that team, and now you have young people whose hopes you'd risen high, but now they don't have a job. So what happens next? So Kolaborate started as a spin-off of a platform that could absorb those young people we've worked with for the 4, 5, 6 months, so that any other marketing agency or any employer out there looking for talent in the marketing space can literally find them on that platform. But then we realized that the problem we're solving for as the Prism agency is actually way, way bigger than what we had witnessed internally as young people getting a job and they don't have any other job. So for continuity purposes, we decided to start that platform, Kolaborate. So in creating the platform, we essentially gave young people the opportunity to work with different employers, not only in Uganda, but around the world.
What gap were you trying to fill by making it global? Why not just stop here?
Our economies are growing. In fact, I think the last time I read, you could correct me, Uganda is one of the fastest growing economies in Eastern Africa.
And one of the most entrepreneurial.
But while those statements are true, they also know the full story. Also, the other part of the story is our population is growing faster than most populations, and actually growing faster than the economy. While the economy is growing fast enough, the younger people, the generations and the young people and the populations are outpacing it. So naturally, you have to find how to put these young brains or these young, innovative young people to work. So instead of us sitting here and counting how many things we can blame, because this is a natural occurrence, having many young people is a natural thing. Ugandans, the fertility rate is higher and things like that. So you can't blame anything per se, right? So what we did is we recognized that the rest of the world is dealing with the same problem, but in vast. What do I mean? That while Ugandans are dealing with the population growth, the rest of the world is dealing with either an aging population, stagnated population, in worst cases, a declining population. But they need their productivity to stay up. Yes. They need human capital. They need brilliant minds. We have that. So for me, it felt like a fitting marriage, a fitting puzzle to go out there to the world and market our talent and bring these jobs back home for the Ugandan. So essentially, I think the key word we might want to remember, these young people are working for organizations around the world, but remotely back home here. So we spend our money in our own economy. We get experience and training that can be retained and utilized to grow more talent in Uganda. So that is essentially why we seek partners around the world to come and consider working with Ugandan talent.
So making us globally competitive, but still locally beneficial.
I love that. That's going to be somewhere on the tagline.
It will be a tagline now. Thank you for that. What were some of the challenges that you faced as you were building Kolaborate?
So I want to look at my problems that I've witnessed or that I've seen, and I'm still seeing from a macro and micro perspective. Okay. So they're just by the geography of of where we are at in itself creates a challenge that a lot of people might not essentially index for. What do I mean? Building a digital platform of Ugandan talent, telling someone, let's even just say telling someone in Sudan, trust me with your project, someone in Uganda is going to deliver it, right? But Sudan might not land the point home. So remember I said that there's a world struggling with a lack of growing population, and we are a world dealing with a growing population, right?
And that is a problem now with so many.
Yeah. But if you think about it, these worlds we want to buy into our talent, there's already a narrative that they've latched to. A narrative that could be true, but is not the entire story. So I start from that macro challenge that it is a trust. There's a trust gap. The trust gap begins locally here to convince a Ugandan that your employee could be in Kitgum delivering work for you who's in Kampala. We still have a belief in physically showing up. Sometimes here and there, my team might say I fall culprit to that narrative because it's how we've been trained, right? So from a macro perspective, when you think of it, if I'm pitching to a person in Europe or the Americas, they might not have any biases that are essentially because they are looking at things from an angry point. It's just the information they have. Yes. And the information they have is Uganda is a beautiful place. Uganda, you could go for good safaris. They're hospitable. The food is good. And maybe they have a few hungry people and we're going to send some aid, right? Rarely has that narrative continued to include the type of talent, the quality of talent, the access to talent, the eagerness of these young people to sell themselves or do great work, right? Now, when you're talking to these people, they're hearing something new. They're like, okay, fair enough, we've heard of Uganda, so we're not among those people who have never heard of this place in Africa. But no one has ever walked to us saying that Ugandan talent is good enough to work with. So you're already dealing with a problem that is fairly bigger than you as a company or a person working for this company, right? So there is a narrative challenge. If I bring it back home here, still on a macro perspective, when we speak of digitization or digitalization, and the three of us, I'd love to say we are doing that, right? There's also an assumption to fall back on the thinking that it has cut across every corner, right? So it hasn't. That is a fact. And yes, it hasn't. And while we're doing a lot of work and while we sit here on a platform that is giving us the opportunity to speak more and power to these things, we can also fairly acknowledge that the penetration of internet is still lacking in some areas. And I would say, well, I think lately we just increased by good percentages, our reach. I think now we are over 60%. I think we're now in 70s. But then now we have a gadget challenge. Remember, the work I'm promising these young people is essentially work that they might need, they will need a computer and an internet connection to and a good computer to do the job, deliver it, and in time. Right? So if that is the situation, then you recognize that those are some of the challenges that you're going to work around. Yeah. Do you mentally prepare your partners at the risk of sounding like you're unserious?
Less professional.
Feeding
into the bias they already have of us.
I love that, right? Yeah. So you're already feeding into a bias that they already held before. So, or are you going to try to create certain work relations where there are different people working in different parts of the country? Right. And that's what we're trying to do. Or you have even partners around your region who can then pick up the slack if there is something delayed on a certain part of work that you can't. Yes. So again, an advantage has been laid there, the power of digitalization, though we're talking challenges. But now let me bring it to the micro. The challenges, because I was talking about now what anybody with a platform would naturally go through. At least from a talent perspective, there's the trust aspect. We have the digitization aspect. But then now we have the egg and chicken. Every founder might speak of that who has a digital platform or a marketplace. But I'll speak from a Kolaborate perspective. You always have to decide at some point what you want to focus on. I think Hakiza, we've had this conversation. So Hakiza and I check in with him on some areas. So do you want to pay attention to the supply? Because the supply is your raw material, if you think of it. It's your, the supply in this case, sorry to use the word raw material, but you get the gist. Yes. It is the talent that you are marketing. So one thing for sure, we don't have a shortage of supply. We don't have a quantity challenge. But do we need to improve our quality? I would say yes. But the resources that you have that usually are limited since you're a startup, do you want to focus them on pursuing the demand side, which is the employers who are going to employ these young people? Or do you get these resources and invest them in reskilling these young people so that they are job ready? Do you see? So now you're stuck in the middle of a very important, two important questions, and a decision must be made. So in my opinion, and obviously there's too many ways this could be wrong or right, but in my opinion and observation, focusing on the demand is where you want to begin. Because we've acknowledged that yes, the quality might need a bit of fixing here and there, but the quantity is for sure there. But if we didn't have the problem, because this is one of the biggest problems right now in sub-Saharan employment, is if you've been paying attention, the BPO talk, business process outsourcing, is crossing across the continent. Good for us, but also speaks to the challenge of fear we are having, that we have this many young people, but where are the jobs? So the point is, because we know the demand is not readily available, you have to invest seeking it, right? But then you can't assume that because the demand is what is most needed, once you get it, the talent will be readily available to do it, right? So who are the partners on ground, or yourself as a business, what aspects are you doing to improve the quality of this talent when the jobs come around? So for me, I found that chicken and egg to be, right now I speak with a lot of conviction that it's demand, but maybe if you call me back here 2 months or 3 months, I might have a pivot and say, hey, by the way, after this experience, we actually think, focus on the talent, right? Yes. So so that challenge for me, I find it very interesting. Now, another challenge, a good one to have, and Hakiza's touched on it, and I actually got a recommendation from him when we were chatting way earlier on, maybe 2 years ago. So another challenge that we have as people building digitally, we assume our digital products are be all and all. So we assume that I have this platform. One, everybody will understand it. 2, business will come to it. But 3, I can get all users needed for this platform to work by sticking digitally. But I want to say this carefully because someone's experience might be different, but at least there's 2 of us here who can vouch for this. Okay. That you actually cannot forget the traditional approach to doing work. The brick and mortar cannot be forgotten.
There needs to be a physical element to it.
There has to be. You, reaching out to these young people at universities, going to these employers to tell them about your talent, creating communities where people can engage physically and appreciate the differences that they can each contribute to each other. So ideally you have a platform, a talent marketplace, an employer, ideally on our platform, you could right now have a gig of say, you need a website, a personal website right now, Anne-Marie. And you're like, you know what, I don't want the stress of looking for different people to give it to me. You go on this platform, you put what you need, which is the website, and you will get 20, 30, 40 people bidding for that job. In theory, that sounds easy and sweet, right? But we spoke of the trust aspect. Anne-Marie is here in Kolaborate for the first time. So what if she gets fleeced? Yes. So now, Kolaborate cannot sit back and assume Anne-Marie will trust Kolaborate to deliver the work. Kolaborate has to go out there, talk to people, the bus analogy. talk to people, tell them, by the way, you want to build a website. We can be able to manage this process for you, identify the perfect person to do it for you, and yet at the most reasonable price you could get it, yet eliminating all these challenges. Now, if I spoke to you that way, yes, I'm speaking as a representative of Kolaborate, but at least you can put a face to it. So that challenge for me, I think it's an ongoing challenge and not a bad one. I just think appreciating it as part of the process can help you do it more cleanly and acceptingly. Yes. Right. So I would say that's some of the challenges that we have seen. One being, the top one being trust on a personal level, not forgetting that the demand side has, both actually demand and supply, has to have a component of on-ground or field-related activation.
Something tangible.
Tangible.
So someone is watching the Ugandan podcast and they want to enter the space. They also want to maybe not necessarily create the platform that you did, but they want to create something that doesn't exist right now. What would you have to say to them who don't have the means, who don't know necessarily where to start?
That's a very important question. So I want to give a reasonably important response. So first I'll say begin. And I know that's going to sound like that joke of the guy with one feather that now has 70,000 bags.
Yeah.
So at the risk of sounding like that person, I think I don't know how this will be received, and I would love actually they're because they're builders. They've built way before me and they're still building. I think people over-prepare. I think there is such thing as over-preparedness. And I genuinely believe if you're ready, then you're late. Right?
Oh,
and
okay.
I think in a world, an engineer spoke of it, in a world that is moving as fast as the world we're living in today,
yes,
none of us alive has ever witnessed what you're witnessing now. So we are all experiencing the same thing at the same time, as opposed to 50 years ago when things could take a reasonably long time to change. So someone can give you feedback and advice that you could actually follow to the T and you'll be better.
Yes.
But today I could give you advice now and swear down in 10 months, you'd think I wanted you to fail because it's not applicable
anymore. Yes.
Exactly. So I would say, and I know people say, okay, how about funding? How about preparedness? How about, there's so many incubators out there that are free, that are preparing young people to articulate their position, to articulate their dream, giving them even place to begin building. Right. So sometimes a place to begin building, in my context, in this case, digital related stuff, you need a work desk, you need an internet and your computer. So, and there is organizations we are aware of that are actually doing that. Even the ICT ministry itself is having programs
like that.
Exactly.
Yes.
Kolaborate for a year and a half had space at the ICT hub, and we applied for this. So again, there's another thing where we are self-defeating as Ugandans.
Disqualify yourself even before you begin.
You know, but I genuinely think we are living in times where anything can be true. Yes, it's who am I to sit here and say you don't need to know people? But also, why do people know you? Because you could know the best people in the world, but can they trust you in certain aspects of things? Right. Yeah, we all know people who walk around with amazing people, but can we say that they are amazing because they walk around with those people?
Or are they successful?
Are they successful because right?
Affiliation?
Exactly. So all those things, you build them.
Yes.
I want younger people. None of us here is in the average age of a Ugandan is 17 years. That blows my mind every time. So 17 years. So no one here is even close to. But you can imagine how young we are. So if we don't attempt to shift the mindset of young people, we are in for a very scary future. What do I mean? We can't have people who have already thrown in the towel. I can't build because I don't have access to this. Okay, so let's assume you don't have access to funding, which is usually the most common challenge.
Sure.
Yes, but do you have a place you can begin maybe pitching? At the level of Kolaborate that we have grown, we're still young, but also we've grown quite a bit. But we're still offering pilot-based pilot-based projects. Because someone doesn't have trust in us yet, but they're willing to try us with a pilot, right? So yes, you're a young person, you don't have funding, but the best funding is revenue funding. The best funding, it won't be grant funding, it won't be VC funding. And don't get me wrong, you need it if you can get it. But sometimes looking at it from the first principles. One, begin. Stop making excuses. Stop looking at why you will fail. Look at, again, take this with a grain of salt, because I'm painfully optimistic. I'm a very optimistic person. I'm trying to now practice pragmatic optimism, where now my head is not only in the clouds. I'm still optimistic, but tethered on the ground, right? So I do really acknowledge the space we are building in, and there's so many challenges to point out on. But as a young person, begin. Start. Talk to, my first interaction with Hakiza was a LinkedIn conversation, and now we are friends. He is here with me. I literally texted him and said, Hakiza, I want to take you to coffee. And Hakiza said, okay, this week is not good, next week, let's meet. That's knowledge. The knowledge that I got there helped me build the next levels or levers that I wanted to build. Hakiza was fresh off selling, or rather having Ugabus acquired. So he had this fresh knowledge. He was eager to teach. He still does. And for me, I realized that small things like those, speaking to people who have seen even worse challenges than you, will make you realize that your challenge is actually, you're starting in a better place, because people have built in more complicated places. It doesn't mean we're negating or talking down your challenges, but it means that realistically, you can begin, right? So begin, join an incubator, and also avoid being a person who becomes, you're like in 20, 30, you only have so many hours. You need to build, you need to test your product, right? So join an incubator or a space that can allow you to practice. Right. One of the places I can confidently speak of is the ICT, and is very, you apply, they assess your ability, they have the assessment, and you're given space to sit and work. Number 3, get a pilot. Do you know how many people are open once you offer something for free?
Everyone, we love free things.
And it's actually, and you think of it as an entrepreneur, it's even not free, because if you trust how good you are, very likely you're going to get the job.
Sure.
Right? So give a pilot. I was just talking to my sister last night, and I was telling her, one of my first clients, you literally made the introduction. So there is that trust aspect. So you have someone, if you're young, then assuming you have siblings, you have people around you, tell them, listen, I'm not asking you to create, knock the door down for me. Just open it, make an introduction for me. Actually, someone made an introduction for us. CK made an introduction for you and I, Hakiza. Yes. So speaking of introductions, many people are very eager to make that introduction. But it's now on you to pitch
yourself once the door has been opened just a bit.
Right. So the advice that I'm giving young people might not be the sweetest, but I think it's fair. Start.
What they need.
You're rough on the edges. You're young. People will understand. And people will actually hold you by the hand, lead you to your next if you're open to it. So those will be my parting shots.
Thank you for that.